Show you guys how to take or how to go ahead and pour up your stone after you've taken an alginate impression. So I've already rinsed the impression off in the water, and I got out as much water as possible by tapping it on the paper towel. You want to make sure there's no water pooled up in the occlusals of the molars. It's okay if it's a little bit wet, but if it's pooling up inside those teeth, then you've got too much water. You got to tap it out some more. Okay, so I'm gonna set that to the side. You want to get your workspace prepared. So we're gonna cover the shakers, the vibrators, with a plastic wrap to keep the area clean, and then I like to put a wet paper towel on top. That's just gonna help absorb any mess that we make. And then we're gonna go ahead and get our stone. So our stone is this yellow stone, and for one arch for bleach tray pour up, we only need about 1/4 of a cup to 1/3 of a cup in there. So I'm just gonna pour that in there. And then to add the water, we just turn the sink on and leave it just at a slow trickle, about room temperature water. Make sure it's not too warm or too cold. And you're gonna let that run. You're just gonna add just a little bit of water at a time and mix in the water until you have the right consistency. The consistency we're looking for is like a runny yogurt, Greek yogurt. So you can see I'm just adding a little bit of water. It's pretty touchy. It just takes a little bit once you get close to where you want to be. Just a tiny bit of water or just a tiny bit of powder to add to it to make it the right consistency. If it's too runny at this point, then I could add more powder, and you want to just add a little bit at a time. This is looking pretty good. Maybe, no, that's actually looking just right on. You can see how it drips off the spatula, but not too much. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so once we've got the mixture we need, you're gonna come over to your workspace and you're gonna turn the vibrator on just to a low setting. You're gonna put your bowl on the vibrator, and if you look inside your bowl, you'll see the bubbles coming up to the surface, and we're just trying to get as much bubbles out of the mixture as we can. So you can see how it's coming up to the surface. If you don't see any more bubbles coming up to the surface, then that's about where you're good. So about 20-30 seconds or so. You set it to the side. You're gonna grab your alginate impression, and you're gonna put just one corner on the top of the vibrator. You're gonna get just a little bit of stone, and you're gonna start up at the molar, the back corner of the mouth, and you're gonna just add a little bit at a time and use the vibrator to make it move in through the teeth. See how it's going slowly, one tooth at a time, filling one cusp tip at a time. Slowly let it flow all the way around into each tooth. You can see how it's kind of pushing that little extra water out of the way. And I'm going to add just a little bit more, but when you add it, you want to add it to where you've already done it. You've already placed it. And you're going to slowly fill in those teeth until it fills in each cusp tip. You've got to do this slow. This is the most critical part. If you do it too fast, you're going to have air bubbles in all of those teeth, and it's going to be really frustrating. You're going to have to redo it again. So one tooth at a time till each one is full. And now we can just add a little bit more stone and let it fill in until the entire arch is full. So I'm just going to keep adding here. I always just add to the same spot, that way I don't get air bubbles. And then once it's full, you can take it off the vibrator and just fill it the rest of the way up, just enough to cover the top of the impression. It doesn't need to be really thick at this point because we're going to end up just cutting all that off later. And then you'll set it to the side and let it set. It takes at least 1 hour to set. If you touch it and it's warm to the touch, that means it's not set, so you need to wait at least an hour. Okay, once you have that set up, then you have your dirty bowl. And it's really important that we don't put this stone down the sink, otherwise it will set up in the pipes and then you have a clogged pipes. So it's very important that you come over to the trash and put the stone in the trash as much as you possibly can. You're gonna scrape out all that stone out of there. And then I'll use a paper towel to scrape off the rest of it and get your spatula clean. Get the rest of the stone out. So you got it pretty clean. At this point you could rinse it off in the sink. Paper towel to dry it off. If you're wanting to make a base for a study model, then it's going to be the same way as you did to pour up for your bleach trays, but now we're going to do a separate mixture for your base. And for one single arch, it's about 1/2 cup, maybe a little bit less. And you pour it in your bowl here. Same thing, you're going to add a little bit of water, but your consistency is going to be much thicker. You want it to be able to hold its shape, but it still has to be able to be all mixed together. So you can't have any loose powder in there. So just a little at a time. And it gets pretty hard to mix it. If it's hard to mix, then you're probably right where you want to be. I'm going to get all that loose powder mixed in. And it's more like a putty mixture, like it holds its shape, it doesn't slide off the knife at all. Well, the whole blob will, but it's not flowing off of the knife, it's holding its shape really good. So that's about where we want it to be. If it's too runny, again, you can add more powder. If it's too thick, add a little more water, but that's right about where we're gonna be. Okay, so then you're gonna come over to the glass slab and get the whole thing of stone that you just mixed and leave it up in a nice pile. You want it to have about the same circumference as the impression that you just took. And then you're gonna put your impression that you just poured up on top and give it a little jiggle. And you wanna keep the impression parallel with the countertop. If you have it cockeyed like that, it's going to take a lot of trimming later on, so get it as parallel with the countertop as you can. And then you're going to use your spatula to combine it with the stone that you already poured up to become one piece. The biggest part that I see a lot of people miss is this back molar area. There becomes a gap right here. So make sure that that is filled in. And use our stone, but the more you manipulate it, the flatter the base becomes. So try not to manipulate it too much. Once you have it, just leave it alone. Also, you want to be careful not to pull too much stone up and over the top of the impression, otherwise later on it's going to be really hard to pull it from the tray later on. Okay, that's about where we want it to be. Right there. And we'll let it sit at least 1 hour until it's not warm to the touch. When you're doing a lower impression, remember that you don't have the palette filled in like the upper, and so when you go to pour your lower, you want to fill in this tongue space. And so in order to do that, we mix 1 scoop of alginate and your powder and your water. Mix it together. And then you're going to put your thumb in the tongue space and you're gonna put the alginate on top, and then I have some water here and I use my finger with the wet water to form it into a tongue space. Remember, you want it to be flat against, like, the same height as the rest of the impression. You don't want to make it a big bump over the top, or else you'll have to cut all that out. And then we'll just let it set up. And be careful not to fill it into the teeth space, just the tongue. Okay, once it's set up, then you can carefully peel your thumb out from underneath there and let the alginate just stay there. And now we're ready to pour it up, just like we showed you at the beginning of the video.